Okay, hello everybody. It is August 25th, 2025 when I'm making this video. Welcome to all the new subscribers. I've had a bunch of you lately and hope if you like these videos you will like and subscribe and be sure to hit the bell notification so you know when I post new ones. Um, okay, wanted to continue in my fact check series, but in this case we're going to do a fact check for J.D. Vance. He had a comment over the prior weekend that I want to be sure that I read correctly to you. Quote, if you go back to World War II, if you go back to every major conflict in human history, they all end with some kind of negotiation, Vance said. Okay, that is his statement. Let's examine the validity of it. First, let me give you the argument in favor of it. He is basically correct that a huge number of wars have ended in treaties. The Treaty of Versailles, the Treaty of Paris, the Treaty of Nanking, the Treaty of Ghent, on and on and on it goes. The armistice in November of 1918, the armistice for the Korean War, things like that. There are countless examples, Treaty of Brest-Litovsk, countless examples of treaties that end various wars. So his basic point here, what he's trying to say is he's shilling for Putin about how, oh, well, Russia's really making concessions and, well, they've agreed they don't have to conquer all of Ukraine and, that kind of stuff. It's very, why he is so hard in Putin's camp, I do not know. But nonetheless, that's not really the point. So the basic point, though, that he's making, which is that we're going to have a negotiated settlement to end the war in Ukraine, he is probably correct about. Many wars end via treaty. There's oftentimes a negotiated settlement. Right now, we have stalemate in Ukraine, and we've had stalemate for 3 years now. To give you an idea, since December 1st of 2022, that's over 2.5 years ago, the Russians have managed to conquer 1% of Ukraine. So the idea that this would lead to some sort of eventual negotiated settlement is pretty reasonable. But he goes completely off the rails here because he says, going back to World War II, well, guys, World War II doesn't end with the treaty. It is the policy of the allies of the United States, Great Britain, and Soviet Union that it will only end the war via unconditional surrender. Italy gets knocked out of the war when they overthrow Mussolini, and eventually the Italians end up hanging him. Germany literally fights to the bitter end. There is no peace treaty with Germany. Hitler blows his brains out. Eva Braun takes suicide. Berlin is leveled. The country is completely overrun by the Allied armies. When the Germans do finally officially surrender, they actually have to do it twice, because the first time they surrendered the United States and Britain, the Soviets say, hey, hold on, you haven't surrendered to us yet, and they make them go and do a second surrender ceremony with the Soviets. But the point here, though, is they didn't do a peace treaty. They didn't sit down and negotiate a treaty with the Allies, say, okay, well, Germany will get this, and the Soviet Union will get that, and the British will get this, the Americans will get the other thing. They just said, we give up. We surrender. Do whatever you want with us. Japan, the same thing. We firebombed over 60 Japanese cities, blockaded the island. We're starving it badly. The Japanese government, by the way, was not going to surrender. They had no intention of surrendering. Even their plan was to, well, that's a whole nother video. But their plan was to continue the war, and under their own plan, many, many hundreds of thousands were left to die of just Japanese alone without even getting into American losses. Then the United States dropped not one but 2 atomic bombs, and after dropping 2 atomic bombs, the Japanese government was deadlocked about whether or not to surrender, and the emperor had to break the deadlock and say, guys, we're done. We're not doing this anymore. Surrender. There was actually a coup after that, as militaristic elements within the Japanese government tried to overthrow the emperor to continue the war. Luckily, some very brilliant guard or some employee at the imperial palace saved the emperor's surrender speech and hid it in a ladies' room, and then it got broadcast, and that brought the war to an end. But that was after we had nuked them twice, and we only nuked them twice after we firebombed over 60 of their cities, and we only firebombed their cities after we blockaded and starved them. So again, the idea that World War II ended with a peace treaty is just nonsense. It did not. Japan had to do the same thing that Germany did, which is they said, we surrender, do anything you want with us. It was utter and complete submission. I would also point out that's how the Civil War ended. You may remember that Ulysses Simpson Grant, they started calling him Unconditional Surrender Grant, because the idea was that the South had no negotiating power at the end of the war. It was, you will surrender and you will take whatever we give you, and that's how that war ended. The Third Punic War is another great example. That war ended because the Romans genocided Carthage. They destroyed the city, they killed everybody, and they literally poured salt on the earth so that nothing would grow there. The Peloponnesian War, another one of the most famous wars in all of history. Remember, Vance said major conflict. The Peloponnesian War is one of the most major conflicts of the ancient world. It did not end with a treaty. It ended with complete Athenian defeat. I would argue that the wars of Genghis Khan, by and large, did not end with treaties. They ended when he killed and enslaved everybody. So yeah, this idea that that all wars end in treaties is factually false. Now again, his basic point, which is that many wars end in treaty, and we're probably going to have to end this war in Ukraine with a treaty, I think he's completely correct about. But what he said was every major conflict ends with a treaty, and World War II ended with a treaty, and those are absolutely false statements. So while his basic point is correct, the way he presented it is utterly false. There was no treaty between Nazi Germany and the Allies. They surrendered. Hitler was dead. We then put many of their surviving leaders, some of their leaders like Martin Bormann had already been killed, but then other major leaders like you had the Nuremberg trial, and they actually end up hanging several of them. Goering commits suicide. Keitel, who was the chief of staff, he gets executed. On and on it goes. Mussolini's dead. Japan's literally burned to the ground. And then there were war crime trials in Japan too. So yes, it absolutely is false what he said. So either way, that is my fact check. If you agree, disagree, please say so in the comments. Love to hear what you say. I do read them. I don't respond a whole lot. I do hit like a lot, but I do absolutely read the comments. So thank you. Hope you have a good day. Bye bye.